Hey guys, it's towniesimbuilds here, and welcome back to another episode of The Sims 4 Real Lore. In this series, we explore interesting destinations from around the world, shrouded in history, mystery, and sometimes a little bit of spookiness. Now, as you can tell from the title of today's video, we are examining the very mysterious case of Italy's Blue Girl Ghost, otherwise known as Azzurrina. Now, as a quick note before starting today's video, unfortunately I am not very well versed in Italian, but I will do my very best to pronounce these different names for you guys. As another note, there will be topics regarding the supernatural and paranormal, and there will also be mysterious circumstances surrounding a child's death, so please keep that in mind while watching. Now, with that said, our story does take place quite a while back, approximately 700 years ago in medieval Italy. Now, the haunting of Azzurrina is actually settled upon a castle known as the Castillo di Montebello, and it is located on a large hillside with a very large fortress and a town within it as well. The castle is located in an area known as Toriana within the province of Rimini. Now, according to historians, there was a man by the name of Uguccione Malatesta who was considered the lord of the Montebello castle. He did live there with his wife named Costanza, and the two had at least 2 daughters within their family. Now, the youngest daughter is actually the center of today's tale, and there has been a little bit of debate regarding her name. Some sources claim that her original and true name was Adelina, also known as Daline. Other sources historically try to verify her name as Gwendalina, which is probably her most widely accepted name that you'll see in a variety of different sources. But then, of course, we do have her very interesting nickname, if you will, known as Azzurrina, and we will get into why she is called that very shortly. Now, some of the debate and some of the controversy regarding Azzurrina really heavily depended on her physical appearance. A lot of sources say that she was actually born albino and had extremely fair skin, bleach white hair, and very light blue eyes. Now, with that said, there has been a little bit of historical debate on how Italy perceived being albino at this time. A lot of sources claim that people actually looked down upon this. They tended to associate being albino with being associated with the devil, possibly even a witch, and obviously those are very strong accusations. Some sources say that this is actually not true, but society did view it as a sort of physical defect, if you will. Now, unfortunately, with this type of discrimination, and being that Azzurrina was from a very noble and prominent family, her parents did in fact try to hide her physical appearance the best they could. One of the most infamous methods was trying to dye the young Azzurrina's hair into a darker brown or black tone. Now, based on a little bit of research, I did find that there was a particular plant that may have been used, and that is known as the guado, also known as the dyer's wool. Now, interestingly enough, this plant is actually a very bright and vibrant yellow, but this was used in medieval times to create a darker tone, mostly a darker blue or black, before the arrival of the indigo plant. Now, unfortunately, due to the very light tones in Azzurrina's hair, the dye would just not take. And instead of turning it into a darker color, closer to brown or black, her hair turned into more of a light blue, very similar to that of her eyes. Now, unfortunately, due to the very problematic dye job, this does lead into her nickname, also known as Azzurrina. Like I mentioned, Gwendalina is probably her most accepted true name, so I will be calling her that moving forward. However, if we do look at the nickname of Azzurrina from more of a etymology standpoint, if you will, the base word of her name, azzurra, is actually blue or light blue in Italian. We now add the ina, which is a feminine diminutive, and together the name of Azzurrina means blue girl or light blue girl. Now, moving forward, it was very clear that the parents were unsuccessful in disguising their daughter's physical appearance, and because of that, they did have to take very drastic measures. It is said that they did not let her leave the castle, and they did in fact assign 2 different guards to look after her. Records indicate that their names were Domenico and Ruggero, respectively. Now, if things weren't already bad enough for the poor Gwendalina, unfortunately there is an even darker turn within this tale. Roughly on the day of June 21st in the year of 1375, it is said that the young girl Gwendalina would never be seen again. Now, examining her disappearance, there is a lot of mystery and a lot of debate on what really happened, but there are some different core elements that are consistent in a lot of the stories. Obviously, with what transpired on this day, we do have the young girl 𝗪𝗛𝗚, but we also have her two guards accompanying her as well. It is said that she was playing on the lower levels of the castle, using a ball of rags as her main toy. Now, unfortunately, this is where things get a little murky. As you guys know, she does have two bodyguards per se that are supposed to be watching her at all times, but at some point in what happens on this day, they do lose sight of her. Now, their reported negligence is then interrupted by a loud scream, and automatically the two men assume that this comes from the little girl, 𝗪𝗪𝗓. Now, they also try to track where she exactly went within the castle. We are somewhere in the cellar, and the men eventually stumble upon the entrance to the icebox. Now, as a little bit of reference, an icebox was quite common in medieval ages. Unfortunately, there is no electricity, so we don't really get proper modern day refrigeration. At the time, it was very common to go down to a lake or a river during the winter time, enabling yourself to cut and collect ice and then store them within the space. Now, with that said, there is even more mystery and weirdness surrounding what exactly happened to Azzurrina. As the men arrive at the entrance to the icebox, which is either a trapdoor or a staircase, the little girl is nowhere to be seen. Now, if we accept this report as true, I would also assume that the castle was very thoroughly searched, but again, there were no records of discovering her body or her toy. And some people even suggest something supernatural at play, almost as if the young girl and her toy completely vanished from the earth itself. Now, at this point in our tale, you're probably wondering, where are her parents? And this continues to be a very murky area. We don't really have any clear accountability for Lady Costanza, her mother, or even her father, 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏. Now, some sources state that 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏 could have been away from the estate based on the war that was happening at the current time, also known as the War of the Eight Saints. Unfortunately, while this may verify Azzurrina's father's whereabouts, we can't really know for sure. And because of her strange disappearance, because of the lack of the body, the lack of the ball, the toy that was present, we do have to examine how exactly Azzurrina did in fact die. Upon hearing the most widely accepted modern take on the tale, it is clear that this could be a pure accident. We do know that this took place in the cellar, and the entryway to the icebox is not exactly the safest per se. Some sources say that it is more of a trapdoor, so if the young girl was trying to recover her ball, it is likely she could have fallen through by accident. Other sources say that it was in fact a staircase, so if she is trying to run and chase after her ball down the stairs, it is likely she could have taken a lethal fall. But again, the question is, where is her body? Where is the ball? And that's what leads us to our next theory. Now, despite having possible whereabouts for this day, many actually theorize that 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏 himself was the main perpetrator, that he was truly responsible for the death of his daughter, 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏. Now, many theorize that over time, unfortunately, 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏 became very frustrated, that due to the physical appearance of his daughter, due to the discrimination, the superstition that the family was facing because of her, he was not able to progress socially and politically and have a strong reputation. As a result, naturally, he wanted to get rid of this problem, and this obviously translated into getting rid of Azzurrina, aka 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏. Moving forward, I do want to note that there is further evidence supporting this theory, but we will get into that very shortly. Now, over the years, over the centuries, obviously, we were never able to find the young girl's body or the toy itself. But as the title of the video implies, her spirit does in fact live on. Supposedly, her story was actually passed around for 250 years before finally translated into writing provided by a local priest in the area. However, the actual book, the actual manuscript detailing her story, was unfortunately a little murky. I don't know if it was ever located, and even if it was, we can't really verify the validity of the tale itself. Now, with the current rise of modern technology, paranormal investigators have run rampant in the castle trying to capture 𝗪𝗪𝗓𝗏's ghost. There have been many TV shows, news reports, even a documentary by the name of 𝗪𝗓 that was produced by an Italian company. And this is a full-on ghost hunting, paranormal research investigation. Now, with that said, there has been a lot of interesting yet highly disputed evidence of 𝗪𝗪𝗪's ghost. I did find a brief picture online provided by Rimini Today, which I believe to be the local Italian newspaper in that area. Apart from that, there is also a lot of audio recordings or potential recordings that capture the ghost of 𝗪𝗪𝗪 either laughing or crying. Some sources state that she even calls out for her mother by the name of Mama, but a lot of sources also counter this, saying that the girl was not very close with her parents whatsoever. Now, within the community of paranormal investigators, there is one particular day that is very heavily agreed upon, and it is in fact the day of 𝗪𝗪𝗪's death, which is June 21st, aka the beginning of the summer solstice. Now, on this day, it is said that her presence, particularly in the evening and night, is the most strong or strongest, and if you're being very detail-oriented and do want the best chance of seeing her, there are periods of 5 years where her presence does vary. Within the first 4 years within this increment, her presence is weaker, but on the 5th year on that particular night is most likely when you'll see her appear. Now, among all the different enthusiasts of the Azzurrina tale, there is one man that does stand out quite a bit from the rest, and this man is an Italian author by the name of Leo Farinelli, and he has been the most connected to this case for the past 20 years. Now, according to reports, this man has done a lot of historical research on this particular case, while actively trying to make spiritual contact with the ghost of 𝗪𝗪𝗪 herself. And this, in fact, does shed a lot of light on the history of the family and also possible causes of her death. Upon examining Farinelli's research, we actually get a different date for 𝗪𝗪𝗪's birth, which is now in the month of December in the year of 1375. Now, in regards to more information on her parents, it is clear that both parents came from very powerful families, boasting both military strength and high nobility. Within the two families, her father 𝗪𝗪𝗪 represented the Malatestas, and on the other side, her mother Costanza represented the Della Faggiolas. Now, reportedly, the marriage was actually arranged and was in fact a sort of peace treaty between the two different families. Based on Farinelli's reports, the families were in fact at odds with each other and did engage in conflict, hence why the marriage was actually arranged by Pope Urban VI. Now, Farinelli also provides some very interesting notes on Costanza that were not seen previously. It is said that based on his research, she was actually very keen on military strategy. But apart from that, and very interestingly enough, she also had several lovers as well, which is actually a very key aspect that we will look into shortly. Now, apart from arranging this very political marriage, the Pope was also highly responsible for appointing different servants, staff, and even soldiers in the Montebello castle. And among some of these people included two very keen people of interest. One of them was an Irish court musician by the name of Gael Duggan, who may have very well been responsible for 𝗪𝗪𝗪's name. Looking at her name from an etymology standpoint, it is said that the name 𝗪𝗪𝗪, when spelt with an E at the center of the word, actually translates to little girl with white eyelashes. Now, for obvious reasons, the musician probably coined this name due to her very interesting appearance, and that was probably how the name stuck moving forward, as a derivative from the name Adeline or Adeline, or simply Deline. Now, the other man that is very important to this tale is a man by the name of Hubert Jean Joseph. He was a French captain and was responsible for the royal guards or soldiers within the Montebello estate. Now, why he is important actually roots back to his appearance, and much like the young 𝗪𝗪𝗪, they did have very similar features in common. Now, unlike a lot of the staff appointed to Montebello Castle, Hubert had quite a different appearance from a lot of the locals. In contrast, being French, he was a lot more fair-skinned, and his hair was actually a light blonde. Now, alarmingly, this is quite a contrast in particular to 𝗪𝗪𝗪, who was more of an olive complexion with darker hair. Now, to make matters even worse, some sources actually claim that both Jean and the young 𝗪𝗪𝗪 both had light blue eyes, and obviously this was too similar of a feature. Obviously, her parents were both more of a Mediterranean complexion with slightly tanned skin, brown hair, and brown eyes, so this was simply too much of a glaring anomaly. And at this point, now knowing that Costanza was infamous for having lovers, we do have a case for an illegitimate child via Hubert Jean Joseph. Unfortunately, despite having very interesting developments and a very clear motive developing, there are still many mysteries and murky water ahead of us. With regards to 𝗧𝗛𝗚𝗚𝗚, we can only assume that the truth eventually came to light, and potentially he was so irate that he took action into his own hands, resulting in foul play and the death of his young daughter. Now, with that being said, unfortunately, we have no information regarding the fates of both Jean and Constanza, which obviously, in the eyes of 𝗧𝗛𝗚𝗚𝗚, are the main perpetrators of this story. We have no idea if they were harmed, if they suffered any kind of punishment, or perhaps even escaped from the castle itself upon the truth coming to light. But of course, at the very core of our tale today, the death of the young Gwendolina is still the greatest mystery. We have no idea what her true cause of death was, we have no body, and with a lot of these strange and very controversial details, it is very possible that the modern legend we know today is in fact a cover-up. Supporting this claim is actually a very important note brought up by Farinelli himself. Reports of a mysterious meeting that potentially took place between the two families regarding the Malatestas and the Della Fagiolas respectively. Now, this meeting did take place on a certain December, but we have no true date associated with the meeting itself. All we know is that upon completing this meeting and having some time pass within the same month, Gwendolina would then disappear and we would never see her again. Now, to be honest with you guys, at this point in the tale, we hit a lot of very dark and somber notes, but thanks to Farinelli's research, I did want to share a little bit of Gwendolina's life with you guys and the positive impact she made within Montebello Castle. Now, as a quick note, I do want to preface this by saying that all of the information, all of the accounts you will hear, these are from Farinelli's research. These were supposedly from different spirit sessions he had, speaking to the ghost of Gwendolina herself. Now, through these different sessions and combined with his own research, we do know that Gwendolina was a very skilled and bright young girl, and she was in fact very loved by many people around her. Her true biological father actually showed a lot of affection towards her, teaching her French and also teaching her a lot of his favorite battle songs. Now, within the castle's kitchen, she was actually known to be very talented, making a lot of very tasty sauces that the different servants enjoyed, with some of them even having medicinal effects. Now, on a similar note, Gwendolina was actually very skilled in the art of perfume making, and this was in fact in tandem with her older sister by the name of Alicia. Now, Alicia unfortunately did not live at the estate at this time, but upon having her sister visit, Gwendolina would make perfumes for her, which were very aromatic, and at many times also carried health benefits. Now, if these reports are in fact true, it is clear that Gwendolina did live an impactful life, even though she did die quite young. She learned many interesting skills, and she also had very meaningful relationships with the people that were part of her life, even within the confines of the castle itself. Alright guys, and that is a wrap on the mysterious tale of Azzurrina, the blue girl ghost of Italy. Now, for those who are curious about the story of Azzurrina, you can actually visit the castle of Montebello today, as it is now transformed into a full-on museum. So many of the castle areas are in fact accessible, including the very infamous walkway into the icebox itself. You can also see an artistic interpretation of Azzurrina, also known as Gwendolina. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this speed build and learning a lot of interesting lore regarding this particular case. Now, obviously for the build itself, this was the full-on Montebello castle, and I think the exterior was fairly accurate, but unfortunately there is a very limited amount of pictures regarding the inside. So I did try to capture some of the interesting locations for you guys, but I did my best to sort of ideate on the rest of it. Just like my other builds, this is still a no CC, no mod limited pack build, and this will be available on the Sims 4 gallery as well. I'm going to leave you guys with the different lot specs along with the final cinematics so you guys can see how the build turned out in the very end. And with that said, this has been towniesimbuilds signing off. Thank you so much for watching, guys.